final round for the NFL Winter Tournament, and we're very gracious to be a part of this. So, without further ado, may I begin the speech?
You may.
According to School of Oriental and African Studies, the loyalty to the North Korean regime is weakening. Because Haggard and Nolan concluded their study by noting that loyalty to the regime may be weaker than we thought, as information blocked by North Korea is unraveling, and now we see how citizens react to news of the outside world. This means that banning now is the wrong approach, and now more than ever, we need our messages to reach the people and help them prepare. This is why my partner and I oppose the topic. In this speech, I'll present each of our team's arguments. For clarity, I would like to offer the following definitions. We will define propaganda as information, especially of a biased or misleading nature, used to promote a political cause or point of view. We would like to define ban as to officially or legally prohibit something, or to officially prevent someone from doing something. In order to properly evaluate whether or not the Korean government ought to ban the sending of propaganda balloons into North Korea, it is most reasonable that we consider, number one, will such a ban be effective, and number two, will the ban be beneficial overall? If the answer to these questions is no, then the resolution must be rejected. Our first argument is about ineffectiveness. Banning propaganda balloons will be ineffective as the ban was never properly enforced and the police are not aggressive enough. First, there are leaflets that despite bans. According to the New York Times, October 22, 2012, it says that activists have succeeded in sending large balloons drifting into North Korea, carrying tens of thousands of leaflets, despite South Korean police efforts to block the action. This means that the police were unsuccessful at stopping the balloon activists and that they do not have the ability to prevent them from launching the balloons. The pro has no sovereignty. Also, the police are not aggressive in stopping activists. According to The Telegraph, it says that the activists moved to another site near the border that was not guarded by police and launched the balloons there. They had described the police's response as a surrender. This means that the police and the military are not serious about a ban and that they will not search exhaustively enough to stop the balloon activists. Therefore, banning propaganda balloons will be ineffective. Our second argument is about bans being unconstitutional. Bans on propaganda balloons are unconstitutional as they violate the freedom of speech and other laws such as the Aviation Act. First, a ban is unconstitutional. According to Article 21 of the South Korean Constitution, all citizens enjoy the freedom of speech, and this means that although the pro side can say that a ban is constitutional, the Constitution says that the freedom of speech may not be banned, and even if it were to be restricted in any way, no essential aspect may be violated. And also, the aviation law cannot stop the leaflet campaign. According to Yonhap News, the South Korean government has concluded that it cannot stop the scattering of anti-North Korea leaflets with the Aviation Act. This means that the pro side's attempt to use unfound legal measures to stop the balloons will not work, and they cannot legally enforce their ban. Therefore, banning propaganda balloons are unconstitutional and they are illegal. Our third argument is about North Korean citizens deserving the truth and the South Korean citizens having the right to send it to them. The propaganda balloons will deliver information because the North Korean citizens deserve to know what is going on with the rest of the world, and information leads to change. Information leads to change. According to School of Oriental and African Studies, the biggest change facing the Democratic People's Republic of Korea's leadership is the inflow of information and the erosion of North Korea's information barricade. As North Koreans increasingly grow tired about hearing about the economic prosperity of South Korea, they'll grow tired of state-supported socialism and will eventually seek reunification on the Korean peninsula. This means that leaflets are a very effective part of the reunification process and should not be banned. And also, Kungmin Daily says that North Korea is the only place that does not allow radio or the internet. Against such extreme blockage, launching balloons is the only way to penetrate into that land freely. And why has North Korea become such a closed land? And why is it not opening up for reform? Because it seeks to idolize its leader and continue governance based on hatred. That is also the reason why it considers Christianity an enemy, as a religion is against idol worship and commands, love your neighbor. Even Hitler of Germany under the Nazis, Stalin of the former United Soviet Union, and Mao Zedong were not so exclusive. North Korea survives under an incubator of closeness, and the North Korean government relies for its life on being closed. Reform, therefore, is fundamentally impossible there. And banning propaganda balloons will lead to lack of information, but sending propaganda balloons will deliver information to North Korea. So for all these reasons, please vote for the con side. Thank you.
Honorable adjudicators, if we do not ban the sending of propaganda balloons, then it could lead to war, because North Korea has been threatening the South already to stop with the activism. So in order to benefit inter-Korean dialogue and continue peace, we must ban the sending of propaganda balloons. This is why my partner and I support this topic resolved. The South Korean government should ban sending of propaganda balloons into North Korea. In this speech, I'll present each of my team's arguments. The first argument I would like to present is ineffectiveness. Sending propaganda balloons are not only ineffective but also causes extraneous harms because propaganda balloons are not very noticed by the North Koreans who are scared to touch them due to severe punishments they may receive if they do. For example, first, North Korea provoked. According to ABC News, North Korea has become incredibly frustrated and angry as they saw their citizens being informed of the flaws of the totalitarian regime with these propaganda balloons. To prevent the further spread of information being spread throughout the country, the regime has publicly executed several citizens, trying to make others fear the outcome of having information and earning information from these propaganda balloons. This means that the lives of these North Korean citizens outweigh the fact that they should be getting the human rights that they deserve. We need to find a way to give them both their life and their human rights, which is obviously not through propaganda balloons. Also, mistrusted leaflets. According to Professor Langkov of BBC News, the leaflets that are sent have a minimal effect because they're usually picked up in the North by hardly any people. They're also mistrusted because they come from the source of hostile propaganda. This means that even though these balloons are seen and they come to the North Korean citizens, a majority of them do not even bother to see it, which will not help either side at all. Therefore, we believe that sending propaganda balloons is ineffective and causes extraneous harms. Our next argument is that sending propaganda balloons damages the diplomatic relationship between North and South Korea, because a diplomatic relationship is not able to work if one side feels threatened or abused by the other. For example, first, cooperative projects. Going to foreign policy and focus, the Park Geun-hye administration could create a range of similar cooperative projects with the North. However, the balloon activists are just as eager to destroy such collaboration as they are impatient to see the end of North Korea. This means that we could actually improve our chances with North Korea, however, the activists are only breaking this chance. Also, worsening relations. According to the South China Morning Post, North Korea's state media said that high-level talks with Seoul were now all but scrapped over the launch of anti-Pyongyang leaflets from the south, which triggered an exchange of fire across the border. This means that because of these balloons, North and South Korea's relationship has worsened to the point where there aren't many meetings with the two countries anymore. Therefore, sending propaganda balloons damages the diplomatic relationship between North and South Korea. Our final argument is that national security outweighs the rights to free speech and expression because it should be the government's top priority to protect its citizens and its country. So we need to emphasize national security. For example, first, propaganda balloons seriously threaten our security. According to Ballooning Evangelism Psychological Warfare, the privatized balloon leaflet campaign is a serious violation of the national security law because activists communicate with the enemy across the border, and it could result in retaliation and thus threatens our security. This means that the government must ban activists in order to fulfill its top priority, the protection of our citizens. Also, saving South Korean citizens' lives. According to the Hankyoreh, results released on October 14th showed that 62% of South Korean citizens agreed that the launches should be blocked. This means that the South Korean citizens are living in fear because of these propaganda balloons, which are causing a huge threat to our national security. The threat is so obvious that even the majority of our citizens are able to realize that it's also obvious that we must ban these balloons in order to be safe from the national security threats. Finally, danger of North Korea. According to Business Insider, January 13, 2015, as North Korea continues its push for additional and more easily deployable nuclear weapons, Pyongyang becomes increasingly dangerous to its neighbors and the world at large. This means that we must keep in mind the harmful consequences that will occur if we continue to provoke North Korea. A ban on these propaganda balloons is necessary if we do not want North Korea to use advanced weaponry against us. Therefore, national security outweighs citizens' rights to free speech and expression. For all these reasons, please cast your votes on the proposition ballot.
When you consider the fact that diplomacy will not happen even when propaganda balloons are banned because it's empirically denied, as North Korea has never wanted peace with South Korea before, don't you think that the pro side is deluded and that the prospect of peace is very simplistic and will not happen?
Actually, no, because situations in North Korea have changed. Currently, North Korea is desperately in need of aid because they're losing a lot of their partners, they're losing a lot of their countries that are used to assist them. So don't you think actually North Korea, because they're so in need of help, they will be desperately in need of diplomatic talks, and when we do ban these propaganda balloons, we will be able to have diplomatic talks with the North?
However, Pyongyang does not want peace because in the past, when we have tried to negotiate with North Korea, nothing has happened. The Sunshine Policy was not successful at all, and the Kumgangsan tourists were laid off after one woman was shot. So don't you think that this proves that peace with Pyongyang is empirically denied and it will not happen as the pro side claims?
we already stated that even if it happened in the past, we have evidence that states that the North Korean citizens, the North Korean government is suffering because currently the situations have changed. And even if they were trying not to have peace with South Korea before, currently they want to because they're losing their partners. They need more support from South Korea and they need the diplomacy with South Korea. So don't you think that it is necessary for South Korea to have diplomatic talks and North Korea is also wishing for them?
However, considering the fact that the ban does not stop the North's threats, as the North Korea's long litany of threats will not end simply because of South Korea's one-time compliance to banning propaganda balloons, don't you think this actually means that with the pro-side's ban of propaganda balloons, we can expect more threats and intimidation because we are capitulating to their demands?
Actually, no, because that's going to be happening in the future. However, we have an imminent threat of national security. We have an imminent threat that North Korea has imposed on us if we continue sending these propaganda balloons. Therefore, we believe that having a ban will be able to protect our national security and we need to focus on the present, not the future. So don't you think that by banning the propaganda balloons, we will be able to protect our national security?
However, banning propaganda balloons is unconstitutional, as according to Article 21 of the South Korean Constitution, it says that freedom of speech may not be restricted, and we can clearly see that right now by banning propaganda balloons, we're not allowing the freedom of expression. And even when North Korea has asked South Korea to ban these propaganda balloons, the South Korean government has stressed many times that they cannot because of the freedom of speech. So don't you think this means that we cannot ban propaganda balloons because they are unconstitutional?
Actually, no, because we have evidence from the South Korean Constitution as well. According to Article 37, it is okay for the South Korean government to restrict citizens' freedoms if there is an imminent threat of national security. So don't you think that because we clearly proved to you that national security is at threat, we need to ban the propaganda balloons and a ban is constitutional?
I disagree, because when you consider the fact that also in Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, it says that everyone has the right of freedom of opinion and expression, and they can seek freedom without interference. So don't you think this means that we cannot ban propaganda balloons because it will be violating freedom of speech at many levels?
No efforts can succeed without penetrating into bloc North Korea. The history of the divided Korean peninsula proves this. 2 occasions of the summit talks, the Sunshine Policy, and even the Six-Party talks were not able to unlock North Korea's locked door. However, the balloons make it possible because they are an apprentice that cannot be detected by radar. This also does not violate the Constitution's guarantee of the right to express. This is why the opposition side still believes that the ban should not be enacted. In this speech, I'll refute each of our opponents' arguments. Their first argument was that the propaganda balloons are ineffective. However, we say that the propaganda balloons are effective because residents of North Korea are brainwashed to hate South Korea and the United States. As long as this hatred occupies them, peace is not possible. We are sending true news to them to solve their idol worship and hatred based on faulty brainwashing. Launching balloons with leaflets, therefore, is a pure and basic human rights movement to open both their eyes and ears, and it is also a pure communication movement to spread religion into the land of no religion. Also, we say that the ban will be effective instead because the launches can be prevented but they cannot be banned. According to Channel News Asia on October 13, 2014, the government suggests that launches can be prevented but stressed they cannot simply ban the practice. This means that even if the pro-side claims that launches have been stopped before, it was only temporary, and the pro-side knows that the government cannot and will not enact a ban, nor will they effectively enforce it, thus negating the pro-side's case. Now that I refuted their first argument, I would like to move on to the second argument, which was diplomacy. We say that the propaganda balloons does not affect diplomacy because North Korea is a country that runs on a black market economy. They smuggle illegal drugs and illegal weapons. They threaten their own citizens and force them into fear in order to gain more power. Judges note that North Korea is a country that will do anything for power. So what makes us think that listening to their threats would help us in any way? All it does is tell power-hungry North Korea that yes, we are afraid of them, and that yes, we will continue to listen to their threats. And the international community will do so as well, bringing out the threat to not only between North and South Korea, but also to the whole world as well. Now, to their third argument, which was national security. The first thing I'd like to point out is that, quote-unquote, they called the North Koreans enemies across the border, but they continue to say that we must save the lives of them. This is a total contradiction of their own words. Also, it is a benefit of socializing North Korean people to the idea that Kim Jong-un can be challenged. For South Koreans, there is of course concern about agitating North Korea, but North Korea's threats are rarely credible, and this is a fact. The question is simply, how can we identify those rare instances when North Korea threats are credible, and its recent threats do not meet the threshold of credibility? Also, we are violating human rights via the national security. According to the book of Psychological Warfare published on 2014, the government often exercises its exceptional power by using the national security law, which guarantees hardline approaches, and then often legal law enforcement over its subjects anytime and anywhere. This means that North Korea is guilty of banning freedom of speech, religious expression, and assembly, and ultimately is abusing its own power and authority by using national security as an excuse to do whatever it wants. Also, we are abusing national security, and that violates human rights and freedom. The current South Korean conservative administration uses the language of basic human rights, particularly the freedom of expression, in response to North Korea, and yet it denies the freedom of expression in gathering for a labor movement, the gay rights movement, and peace movement on the pretext of national security in South Korea. This means that the current ban is yet another attempt to use national security as an excuse to take away the rights of their own citizens. For all these reasons, please vote for the opposition. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, if we keep sending propaganda balloons, then it will only anger North Korea, because they've already sent numerous threats and shot down these balloons near the border. So we need to prioritize the national security of our citizens. This is why my partner and I still support this topic. In this speech, I'd like to refute each of my opponent's arguments. The first argument I'd like to refute is ineffectiveness. The other side has stated that right now these propaganda balloons banning the propaganda balloons is going to be ineffective and won't stop the activists. However, we disagree with this because first, according to Dongal Ilbo, it states that the National Assembly's Foreign Affairs and Unification Committee for the first time passed a resolution urging the South Korean administration to take necessary measures to prevent the leaflet scattering from undermining the inter-Korean relations and jeopardizing the safety of South Korean residents living near the military demarcation line. We see that right now, these propaganda balloons are harming South Korean citizens as well as North Korean citizens because right now, these propaganda balloons are only making both sides live in fear because first, for South Korea, we can see that right now, North Korea might retaliate against us because of these propaganda balloons, and also for North Korea, these propaganda balloons are only just making them either be executed or put in prison camps if they are found with them. Also, we will take preemptive measures to prevent civic groups from flying anti-North Korean leaflets, the Seoul official said, adding that the measures would be taken in different manners from previous ones. The remarks suggest that Seoul will prevent civic groups from sending the leaflets to the north. We see that right now this ban will be effective, and we need to enforce it so we can actually stop these propaganda balloons from being sent and to stop the tension between these two countries over these propaganda balloons. The South Korean government will take proper actions if necessary regarding the spread of anti-North Korean leaflets jeopardizing South Korean safety and cause internal conflicts. Right now we see that there is a necessary measure to put in banning these propaganda balloons. So therefore, right now we believe that right now the ban will be effective and is needed. The second argument I'd like to refute is that the bans are unconstitutional. The other side has stated right now, if we put a ban on the propaganda balloons, it's unconstitutional. However, we disagree with this because first, right now, our national security is harmed. As I've already stated before, we need to take measures to actually stop these propaganda balloons from being sent, and also it's actually better for both sides because we see that there's no benefits from these propaganda balloons. Right now, people have been executed for viewing these propaganda balloons, and just sending a message of hope isn't going to actually help the people in poverty. It's not going to solve the problem of human rights abuse. We see that these propaganda balloons aren't going to solve anything, and we believe that the bans will be constitutional and is needed. Also, is the opposition side really helping the North Koreans with the North Korean citizens in North Korea? We see that right now, people are just put into prison camps for viewing these propaganda balloons. They're living in fear of these propaganda balloons landing near houses or homes and maybe jeopardizing their family. Also, right now, according to the Korea Times, Leon Segal, director of the Northeast Asia Cooperative Security Project at the Social Science Research Council, said, in the United States, freedom of speech does not extend to shouting fire in a crowded hall. As a recent exchange of fire on the DMZ suggests, this is all the ballooners are doing. This means that right now we believe that these balloons aren't giving any benefits at all and are only giving harms. The citizens are using their right to freedom of speech and sending these propaganda balloons, but like it has been stated, freedom of speech does not extend to shouting fire in a crowded hall, and we see that this is causing an issue. The third and final argument I'd like to refute is deserving the truth.
The other side has stated that right now North Korea deserves the truth and these propaganda balloons are unnecessary. However, as I've already stated, these propaganda balloons are only endangering lives of both countries. Right now, these propaganda balloons won't be effective because it can't even get to its destination most of the time. For 80% of the year, the winds blow west to east, so the balloons tend to fall near the DMZ. Civilians don't get to see them, and it's mostly soldiers there. This means that these balloons don't even get to where they're supposed to go a lot of the time and can't get its message to the citizens. Also, these citizens aren't really familiar with democratic concepts. They've been brainwashed for so long, so how do we know that these propaganda balloons are actually going to help the citizens within the country? We believe that right now, lives are at risk, and people are living in fear of these propaganda balloons. So for all these reasons, please vote for the proposition side.
When you consider the fact that 2 occasions of the summit talks, the Sunshine Policy, and even the 6-party talks were not able to unlock North Korea's closed doors, however, the balloons make it possible because they are an apprentice not detected by radar, and this also does not violate the Constitution's guarantee of the right to express. So don't you think that the propaganda balloons is what will actually be able to break through North Korea's barriers?
We disagree with this because these propaganda balloons are only angering North Korea. We see that right now it's not going to break any barriers. It's just going to anger North Korea even more. And we see that right now we need diplomatic talks. However, these propaganda balloons are preventing us from doing so. So don't you think that right now we really need to prioritize in banning these propaganda balloons so we can have any sort of benefit from actually talking with North Korea?
I think you're misunderstanding my point. You keep stating that they need to have democratic talks, but I just stated that the 2 occasion summit talks, Sunshine Policy, and even the 6-party talks were not able to unlock North Korea's door. And even though they keep saying that they will try to do something, that doesn't mean that they will actually follow through with it. North Korea is a country known to not keep their promises.
We see that right now. This is actually the type of action that we're trying to always say that North Korea can't keep its promises. This is what is actually backing us down from actually trying to have any sort of effectiveness between the 2 countries. And we see that right now we need to actually have some sort of talk with them rather than provoking them because we see these propaganda balloons are only angering them. So don't you think that right now it's much more effective to actually ban them and to actually start talking with the country?
But what makes us think that listening to their threats will help us in any way? All it does is tell power-hungry North Korea that yes, we are afraid of them, and yes, we will continue to listen to their threats.
This is only an assumption right now. We need to actually take away this imminent threat of our national security. We see that right now. Even if they might send threats in the future, we can deal with that later. However, right now, we see that there's a current situation that we have to solve.
This is not an assumption. North Korea is a country that runs on a black market economy. They smuggle illegal drugs and weapons, and they are not afraid to kill their own citizens because they will do anything for more power.
However, what are these propaganda balloons going to solve in the problem in North Korea? We see that these propaganda balloons, just by sending messages of hope, isn't going to feed the people who are hungry. It's not going to stop the human rights abuse. It's just going to make it worse. So how are you actually helping the North Korean citizens within that country?
The propaganda balloons let the citizens of North Korea know what is happening outside their borders and outside of North Korea, as the North Korean government prevents the North Korean citizens from having their own human rights, and because they block their knowledge of anything that happens outside of North Korea. Furthermore, the propaganda balloons are actually taking a step in order to improve our society and by letting the citizens know. However, by banning the propaganda balloons, that is not improving anything.
We find that these propaganda balloons are only making both sides live in fear. We see that there's no benefits from these propaganda balloons. We see no effect from these propaganda balloons, so we actually want to ban them so we can actually try to help both sides and actually prevent the North Korean government to actually put more people in the prison camps and to execute more people because of these balloons. And we believe that right now it's the most effective way to actually ban them and take them away.
Our first and second arguments were about ineffectiveness and bans being unconstitutional. Our opponent said we were wrong, however, we weren't, because our subpoint about the aviation law not being able to ban propaganda balloons was not refuted, so this point still stands. And which side is the most effective? Because the con side definitely is. The ban is proven to be ineffective, and there were leaflets sent despite the bans, and which prove that the ban will be very ineffective. And activists have succeeded in sending large balloons drifting into North Korea carrying tens of thousands of leaflets, despite South Korean police efforts to block the action. The police are also not aggressive enough, according to the Telegraph, in blocking the actions. If the police are not serious about a ban and what they are doing, how can the ban ever be effective? because it won't be. Not only is the ban ineffective, but it is illegal also. According to Article 21 of the South Korean Constitution, freedom of speech is granted to all citizens, and banning propaganda balloons would violate Article 21, as banning doesn't allow freedom of expression. It would also violate Article 19 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, as it says that everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference. The government also says that Korean officials, the government says so also as they mentioned during the Asian Games in Incheon at an impromptu meeting with North Korean officials. They said that they cannot ban propaganda balloons due to the freedom of speech, as stressed once again during a news meeting during January 9th. And also, our third argument was about reform being impossible without the propaganda balloons, and our opponents didn't refute our point about no reform without propaganda balloons, so this point still stands. And propaganda balloons are critical to our reform, as without these, the North Koreans will not have information. We cannot change or even progress without propaganda balloons. Propaganda balloons deliver information which can make a change. Loyalty to the regime may be weaker than we thought, as information blocked by North Korea is unraveling. Banning now is the wrong approach, and now we need more than ever our messages to reach the people and help them prepare. Reform is necessary, and North Korea cannot remain in this current political status forever. And also, our opponent talked about how the propaganda balloons don't do anything, but how will banning the propaganda balloons do anything? At least with the propaganda balloons, we are giving the North Koreans their human rights to know what is happening outside their borders.
They said that we were wrong about ineffectiveness, however, we were not wrong because first, they have stated that North Korean citizens are brainwashed and that sending them these propaganda balloons will be able to send them the truth. However, in their definitions, they stated that these propaganda balloons are information that's biased, which actually contradicts their evidence that says that they're sending them the truth, because biased political information is not the truth. Therefore, we believe that statement was a little bit contradictory. And also, they have never disputed the fact that these propaganda balloons are getting North Korean citizens killed and executed because they're angering the North Korean regime. In order to stop these citizens from being executed, we also need to ban the sending of these propaganda balloons. Therefore, we believe that we were not wrong about ineffectiveness. They also said that we were wrong about damaging diplomatic relationships. However, we were not wrong because, first, North Korea hasn't responded so harshly previously because they weren't as unstable then. However, currently North Korea has been losing power and loyalty as their citizens have already started realizing that their government isn't the one they want. The situation has completely changed from the time when we have last had propaganda balloons, and that is why North Korea will feel obliged to respond differently. Also, we need to focus on the current situation, not the far future. If we do not ban the sending of propaganda balloons, then it means that North Korea will attack, risking the lives of hundreds of millions of the people living in South Korea. The opposition side is stubbornly stating that by banning propaganda balloons, we will be supporting and emboldening the North Korean government. However, that's an entire assumption as they have not provided direct proof on that. Finally, they said that we were wrong about national security being more important than the freedom of speech. However, they failed to refute the fact that the North now has developed their warfare, meaning that continuing to provoke them with these propaganda balloons will do no good to South Korea. By the time Obama leaves office, North Korea could have a total of 20 nuclear weapons, as they are producing 4 to 6 each year. So continuing to provoke them by using hardline stances which are failed tactics will only make them feel threatened, making them and urging them to use their fancy weaponry. Therefore, we believe that we were not wrong about national security being more important than freedom of speech. We believe we need to be more safe than sorry. For all these reasons, please vote for the proposition side.
When you consider the fact that, according to the International New York Times, a ban is self-defeating, as yielding to such threats is self-defeating both on principle and as a matter of practical policy, using the national police to gag South Korean activists undermines the government's foreign policy and violates their right to free speech. So don't you think this means that the pro side not only violates South Koreans' freedom of speech, but they also take away the effectiveness of Seoul's foreign policy as well?
We do agree that freedom of speech is important. However, national security is harmed and it's endangering lives. And we see that right now. We actually need to prioritize the lives of our citizens, and we see that right now freedom of speech is important. However, we need to prioritize this first. So don't you think that right now these propaganda balloons are only endangering lives, and we need to solve this situation before it gets any worse?
Actually, because North Korea is a country that is not afraid of killing their own citizens, nevertheless, of what is happening in their own country. And North Korea is a country known for being violent, as their threats, they keep sending out threats. But if we listen to these threats, we are sending even more danger to the citizens and the lives of the citizens, because we are telling North Korea that they are becoming more powerful and that we will listen to their threats.
Well, actually, no, because the opposition side is currently being unrealistic. They're taking a gamble over South Korean citizens' lives. However, by protecting our national security, by banning these propaganda balloons, we will not be risking the South Korean citizens' lives. We will not be taking a gamble. So don't you think that it's more effective if we do ban these propaganda balloons, so that we're not risking our own citizens' lives?
It's not that we're risking our own citizens' lives. What we're doing to risk our own citizens' lives, and you did not refute the fact that these threats are actually a thing that is risking the lives of our citizens, because North Korea is not afraid to kill any citizens, as the bombardment of the islands of South Korea and the killing of over 40 sailors in a Korean ship has proved that North Korea is not afraid to do so.
Then you probably agree that propaganda balloons are a threat and are saying that right now before North Korea will attack and probably retaliate, but if we keep sending these propaganda balloons and angering them even more. So don't you think that right now these propaganda balloons don't really give any benefit to either side, and we can't risk and emphasize such a thing that won't be effective?
I disagree, because when you consider the fact that the balloons are not an impediment to talks, according to Sung Yoon Lee, Fletcher School of Law and Diplomacy, both the South Korean government and the public are increasingly taking the mistaken view that the balloons, instead of Pyongyang's frequent threats, are an impediment to talks. And don't you think this means that the pro-side's claim that the propaganda balloons prevent peace talks is wrong, and it's Pyongyang's frequent threats which derail the peace process?
However, you haven't answered my question about saying that these propaganda balloons are ineffective and are not giving any benefit to both sides. However, answering to your question about these peace talks, right now we see that North Korea and South Korea aren't having talks because North Korea wants these propaganda balloons to be banned and to be taken away. However, there's no talks because these propaganda balloons are being sent. So don't you think that right now we really do need to ban it if we want to have a peace talk between these two countries?
Actually, no, because in time, the goal should be to encourage internal efforts to integrate the Korean economy into the regions. The steadily expanding aspirations of Kim's own people will ultimately be the greatest threat to his role. The first thing I would like to do is point out some critical points of this debate to the judges. The first thing I would like to point out is that the pro side keeps stating, we can do this, we should do this. But just because one says that they will try to do something, but that doesn't mean that they will follow through. Especially in this case, as North Korea is known to be a country that does not keep their promises. My second point is that they did not answer our point to their contradiction when they said that they called the North Koreans enemies across the border, but they continued to say that we must save the lives of them. The third point is that the opposing team keeps saying risking lives of citizens, but we have refuted their point by saying it is listening to the threats that is the problem. The proposition team failed to ever refute it. And also another point that the proposition team failed to refute is and they keep saying that we need to have democratic talks and think that these talks will eventually lead to peace. But they did not refute our point that the two occasions summit talks, the Sunshine Policy, and even the six-party talks were not able to unlock North Korea's door, as these propaganda balloons is an apprentice that are not detected by radar, and as this does not violate the Constitution's guarantee of the right to express, it gives the North Koreans a chance to know what is outside of their barriers. Furthermore, they talked about how the propaganda balloons don't do anything, but how banning the propaganda balloons do anything as well. At least with the propaganda balloons, we are giving the North Koreans their human rights to know what's happening outside their borders. On the other hand, our opponents never stated how the bans will help, while the pro-con side did. And even if the ban was to follow through, what will happen after the ban? What will happen after the ban is enacted as the North Korean citizens go back to their first level of not knowing anything of what is happening outside, and their human rights are being violated. And the unification is what both sides are pushing for. We should make fresh headway to the national reunification movement for this year. In time, the goal should be to encourage internal efforts to integrate the North Korean economy into the regions. The steadily expanding aspirations of Kim's own people will ultimately be the greatest threat to his role. For all these reasons, please vote for the opposition side. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring up the two questions that the opposition side has brought up in the beginning of this debate, which is one, will such a ban be effective, and two, will a ban be beneficial overall? The pro side's answer to both these questions is yes, because these bans are going to be able to ease the tension between these two countries on the issue of these propaganda balloons. North Korea has already been angered by the actions of the activists in South Korea, and if we don't ban it, then in the worst possible scenario, we will have war. We cannot risk such a situation to occur, and the judges must consider the national security for South Korea as well as North Korea. Right now is not the right time to send these propaganda balloons. The opposition side is not thinking realistically of the huge risk of sending these balloons. They're only focusing on helping the North Koreans, however they aren't thinking of the big picture. The pro side is thinking of both countries. We have proven that propaganda balloons are only harming the North Korean citizens. The opposition side is only gambling with these people's lives by saying these propaganda balloons are effective, they will send a message. But right now, as I've already stated before, they aren't thinking of the big picture of both of these countries. Right now, they're mainly focusing on North Korea. They've also stated that right now we need these propaganda balloons will help in reunification. However, we disagree with this because we've already stated that peace talks have been cancelled. A summit on October 30th, 2014 has been cancelled because of these propaganda balloons. The other side keeps stating that this is not an impediment to talks. However, throughout this whole debate, we have stated that this is an impediment to talks, and it's harming the diplomatic relationship between these two countries. Right now, we see that people are living in fear. Right now, we want to ask the question, are propaganda balloons beneficial or harmful? And we say it is harmful. People are living in fear of these balloons, as my partner and I have stated throughout this whole debate. The side wants to help North Korea, however, right now is not the right time, and propaganda balloons aren't solving the problem in North Korea it's not solving the situation in North Korea at all. If you vote for the proposition side, then you agree that we can't keep sending something and emphasizing something that won't work, and will only just increase the human rights abuse in North Korea. So for all these reasons, please vote for the proposition side.